The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
There's no question that the Vancouver Canucks are the most cursed franchise in NHL history.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Forget the return for a second. This is undoubtedly one of the darkest days in Vancouver Canucks history. I'm Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, sports reporter for Daily Hive. And again, forget about the return for a second. The Vancouver Canucks just traded the best player that they've seen in this franchise in 55 years. It's an embarrassing day for this franchise. The fact that it even got to this point. A player like Quinn Hughes is a guy that you should be building around to win Stanley Cups. There's no team in the NHL that wins without elite talent. The Canucks had one in Quinn Hughes, and they just traded him away. Of course, I got to feel a little silly too. We were on the air, Kyle and I, maybe 8 hours ago, talking about the 7 destinations for Quinn Hughes, and the Minnesota Wild, they kind of came out of nowhere. Of course, the Minnesota Wild relatively close to Detroit. Quinn Hughes has ties to Bill Guerin, but none of this really matters, right? Like, this is a mess that, again, started in the Jim Benning era and has been amplified by the regime of Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford. And look, I wanted to believe. I was believing in Allvin and Rutherford in the early days. I think most of us were. But what has transpired over the past couple of years of them being in charge is unfathomable. And look, this is a failure ship at every level of the organization. The failure ship starts with the owner, okay? This win now mentality, make the playoffs, get that playoff revenue, stay competitive, blah, blah, blah. The Canucks have made the playoffs, 3 times in the past 11 seasons? They had one meaningful playoff run with Quinn Hughes in his 7 years with the franchise. The fact that you had a talent like Quinn Hughes, that not only did you have that talent, that fell to you in the draft at 7th overall, when other teams completely screwed up. That was a gift from the gods, or so it felt like from the Vancouver Canucks. But nah, instead it's just another kick to the groin instead. It starts with Francesco Aquilini for the mentality of trying to stay competitive, trying to drive playoff revenue, and failing to build a legitimate contender around Quinn Hughes. The meddling in the Jim Benning era set this team back. We all know that. Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford come in. Of course, it looks like better days are ahead for this franchise. And what do? They trade Bo Horvat, JT Miller, and Quinn Hughes. And look, maybe I'll get to the return at some point, but right now, all I'm feeling is frustration, sadness for this franchise, sadness for this fan base, not the franchise. Sadness for this fan base who deserves so much better. And for those of you out there who think, oh, this fan base, they ride it, they don't deserve better. I've said it before and I'll say it again. And I know I'm going on a tangent now, but those are not true Canuck fans. True Canuck fans bleed the blue and green. We got one of the most intense fan bases in the sporting world. And they deserve better than seeing a generational player traded away like Quinn Hughes. And look, the management team has to eat a good chunk of this too, right? And they miscalculated hard on the Bo Horvat, JT Miller decision. A decision that tore apart that locker room, that forced the trade of the best player that this franchise has ever seen. Man, oh man, it's a sad day for Vancouver Canucks fans. Quinn Hughes no longer with the team. And look, I got to credit the reporter today who asked Patrick Allvin about the fact that there's potentially a culture problem in Vancouver. That was a hell of a question, and I know Patrick Allvin got his back up and said there's no culture problem here, and I know I'm ripping on him because he screwed up. He did. Even with this trade now, and look, they got a good package back, and lots of reports are there saying, oh, this is the best the Canucks could have done. I do question that. When you have reports out of Washington that you had a couple first-round picks, Cole Hudson, Connor McMichael on the table, I think the only way you win a Quinn Hughes trade is if you collect first-round picks, multiple first-round picks, like the Sens did with Erik Karlsson. I know they had a conditional one. They only got one, but they ended up with Tim Stützle. You need to make those dart throws and try to bet on a team falling out of the race. Minnesota ain't going to do that in 2026 with Quinn Hughes on the team, with Kirill Kaprizov up front. You know, maybe they'll fall to the middle of the pack, but that's not going to be a top 5 pick for the Vancouver Canucks. To me, that was the only way you win the Quinn Hughes trade. Again, a failure of epic proportions from Patrick Levine and Jim Rutherford. Again, I'm forgetting the return for a second. Maybe we'll get to that later. But you just traded away the best player in franchise history. And look, as a full-time rookie reporter, I'm kind of kicking myself a bit. You know, one of the questions I thought about asking Quinn Hughes last night, and I mentioned on the postcast last night, shout out to the everydayers, they know this. It looks like I actually got the last question into Quinn Hughes in general, but the question I really wanted to ask last night was, do you still have the desire to be a Vancouver Canuck? Because clearly he didn't. And look, you might have given a nothing burger answer or thrown in a bunch of I's, a bunch of me's, kind of like you did in most of his scrums. And look, I'm not really faulting Quinn Hughes here. But in Vancouver, this fan base deserves players who want to wear the blue and green, who want to bleed for this franchise. When was the last time we've really seen a player that has wanted to give everything to this team? Quinn Hughes was close to it. By the end of the day, he wanted out. And again, I'm faulting that more on management and ownership. But this franchise, despite never winning a cup, has seen guys like the Sedin twins, like Trevor Linden, like Stan Smeel, people who wanted to be Canucks for life. I'm not sure if there's a player on this team right now that really wants to be a Canuck for life. I know Elias Pettersson didn't want to get traded. He signed the contract. He also talked about wanting to make more money than William Nylander. So, I mean, was it about the money or was it about wanting to be a Vancouver Canuck? You know, Brock Besser re-signed with this team in the offseason. Was that because he wanted to be a Vancouver Canuck or maybe because he has other personal ties here? This city deserves players who want to be Vancouver Canucks for the long term. But again, that's not the primary problem here. The primary problem is an owner who focused on winning now instead of building a Stanley Cup contender. And again, why aren't we being patient here? I mean, it's already been 55 years. What's another few years of doing things the right way? And this owner, this management team has not done things the right way, especially with this management team over the last 12 plus months. They screwed up the JT Miller situation. They amplified that mistake by trading a first for Marcus Pettersson. And let's get into this for a second. I mean, there's rumblings out there today from some insiders that the Canucks knew that Quinn Hughes didn't want to re-sign for about a year and a half. If that's true, why in the hell are you trading a first-round pick, an unprotected first-round pick for Marcus Pettersson to try to make the playoffs? Make it make sense. Not much that the Canucks organization has done over the years has made sense. And again, this fan base deserves a lot better than this. And look, a lot more win now pieces for the Canucks today. And look, there's some excitement in there. A lot of things I did get wrong, right? Me and Kyle fought about this last night on the show about how I really thought a Quinn Hughes trade was going to drag out closer to the trade deadline, closer to the Olympic break. Kyle said, Quinn Hughes has played his last game at Rogers Arena. I refuse to believe him. But here we are, less than 24 hours after that game, and Quinn Hughes has in fact played his last game for the Vancouver Canucks. It's a wild day. It's an unfathomable day. And it's one of the darkest days in Canucks history. It really is. Look, if you want to be glass half full and be excited about the return, fine. Maybe I'll hit that point too. But right now, I've been smacked in the face with reality. And the reality is the Canucks just traded a generational defenseman, one of the best defensemen we've ever seen play in the NHL. And you think I'm exaggerating things? Look at the numbers. Offensively, this is one of the most dynamic talents to ever be on this team. And this ownership, this management failed him by failing to build a contender around him. Chasing players to win in the moment, failing to build a legit team, even when they had guys, right? Going back to the end of the betting era during Quinn Hughes' first playoff run, they screwed up that offseason. They screwed up the offseason after they went to Game 7 against the Edmonton Oilers. They've amplified their mistakes since then. It's a damn shame for this fan base. It really is. It's a tough day. It really is for Canucks fans. All right, I'm going to cut to a quick break. On the other side, maybe I'll talk a bit about the return, my thoughts on it. My thoughts are that the Canucks screwed up by trading Quinn Hughes. That's the gist of it. But let's talk a bit about who they got in return. Shout out some of your comments as well. Again, you're listening to Locked On Canucks. Man, oh man. I mean, I didn't see any odds on FanDuel for this, but the Minnesota Wild were not in the top 5 in terms of Quinn Hughes contenders. This is an absolute shocker. But FanDuel's got a lot of good stuff, man. And look, man, it's Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. I'm going to be doing this for the end of time until someone kicks me off this goddamn program because I love this team, man. And I want to live to see a Stanley Cup, and we feel further away than ever right now. We really do. And look, prove me wrong. I want to be proven wrong, but that's how I feel. But in terms of FanDuel, again, they're all about the NFL, man. It's the home stretch. The Seattle Seahawks, 13.5-point favorites against Phillip Rivers and the Indianapolis Colts. Seahawks, go make me happy because the Canucks, they ain't doing that right now. And if you want a little extra excitement, a little extra happiness in your sports life, and you can do it responsibly, go check out FanDuel by visiting FanDuel.com and by visiting the FanDuel app today. Man, oh man, let's go shout out our friends over at Doer, baby. Do the Doer, okay? You know what also makes me happy is wearing jeans that are comfortable, man. Let's go. All right? You know, a lot of jeans that tight fit in, don't have that stretch, but Doer, man, they got 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. I've been buying it for myself. I've been buying it for my family. I've been buying it for the people I care about, man. Because I want the people in my life to be happy and be comfy, okay? And Doer, they do just that. Do the Doer. They make the world's most comfortable pants. Let's go. You can go check them out here in Vancouver at 1757 West 4th Avenue. Make sure to use our promo code LOCKEDONCANUCKS in store for 15% off your first order. You can also get that same 15% off by using Locked On Canucks at doer.ca/LockedOnCanucks. That's DUER.ca/LockedOnCanucks. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. My name's Trevor Biggs, co-host of the show. Shout out to Kyle Bowen. Hopped on the show earlier today when I was out at the Christmas market with my kids. And I often say the kids are a nice distraction from the sadness, the turmoil that is covering the Vancouver Canucks. But man, oh man, I learned about the trade today when I was on a merry-go-round. I want to throw my kid off a merry-go-round, man. That's what I felt when I got the call. Not being around to cover it. That's my job after all. But man, oh man, like I said, just a completely dark day for the Vancouver Canucks. And again, you want to be optimistic. All the power to you, man. I'm usually a pretty optimistic guy, but I think this is just reality right now. The reality that we traded the best player in franchise history. And feel free to let me know in the comments. Is Quinn Hughes the best player in franchise history? I would say so. Up there with Pavel Bure, at least in terms of pure talent. It's a tough day for the Vancouver Canucks. So the Vancouver Canucks get in return. You all know by now it's Z Buim, Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, and a 2026 first-round pick. Again, got a lot of things wrong, but one thing I was saying with all this trade talk, all this turmoil, is that Liam Ogren was a guy I figured the Canucks would be interested in. This is a guy that the Canucks had interest in, reportedly, at the 2022 draft. A guy that's played with Jonathan Lekkerimäki and showed some chemistry with him in Sweden, both in the Swedish Allsvenskan, I believe, and at the World Juniors as well. Ignore the fact that he's got 0 points in 17 games this season. I do think this is going to be a good middle six player. But what are we talking about here? We got a good middle six player, potentially in Liam Ogren, a good middle six center in Marco Rossi. I really do think he is a 2C. I'm a pretty big fan of Marco Rossi's game. But the trade really hinges on, can Z Buim be a number 1 NHL defenseman that can help you win a Stanley Cup? And that is asking a lot of a guy who's currently 20 years old. I know he put up the big numbers in college hockey recently. I really liked his game in the playoffs last season. I watched him pretty closely when I was at that Canucks game on Saturday. Mind you, that's the only Canucks home win I've covered so far this season. I didn't notice him a whole lot in that game. I was keeping a pretty close eye on him. I thought he had a pretty quiet game overall. But this is a guy that's got the chops to be a number one defenseman in the NHL. Is he going to be Quinn Hughes, though, at his peak? And can the Canucks build a legitimate Stanley Cup contender around him? Call me skeptical. Because why the hell would I have faith right now? Other than just blind faith that it's going to work out, man. Maybe I need to say the prayer. Maybe I need to celebrate 420. Maybe I need to play the hippie music. But what evidence has this franchise, this ownership, this management given me that they're going to build a Stanley Cup contender? And I get it's a tough job. That's why these guys make the big bucks. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about a team that we thought had three franchise pillars in place: in Elias Pettersson, Thatcher Demko, and Quinn Hughes. That's what you need, right? To build a Stanley Cup contender. You need the number one goaltender. You need a number one center. You need a number one defenseman. The Canucks seemingly had all of that. Oh, except their number one goaltender can't stay healthy. Their number one center is more like a number two on a Stanley Cup contender now. And now the number one defenseman has been traded. It's a crazy day for Vancouver Canucks fans. And look, I am excited about the players that got in return. My preference was that they would have chased more futures. And feel free to let me know in the comments if you agree with that sentiment. I've argued with people about that, leading up to this trade, that I would prefer the Canucks at least snag 2 first-round picks, if not more. Make the dart throws. Build for the future. Because with this team right now, I don't see them being a Stanley Cup contender anytime soon. I'm sorry. Right now, you're banking on Elias Pettersson getting back to being that guy. He hasn't shown it in a long time now. Right? And the fact that they got Marco Rossi kind of tells you that Pettersson's not going anywhere. I know he's got the no-move clause, but he's probably not going anywhere. And as much as I love the guy, I've loved the talent for years. For the most part, I've been a pretty big supporter of his. He has not shown in almost 2 years that he can be a number one superstar center that can carry this team to Stanley Cup glory. So you have a below average number one center. I think you maybe have an average number two center. Like that. We're talking about a team that's destined for the mushy middle once again. Canuck fans, I think, should hope that this team does continue to bottom out this season and get a top 5 pick or a top 3 pick, really. Maybe even win a lottery, man. It's something that has not happened in 55 years, going back to the curse of 1970. Canuck fans deserve better. And maybe, just maybe, this is a year where maybe if they don't get the number 1 overall pick, they find the number 1 player in that draft. And more importantly, they learn how to build a Stanley Cup contender around it. One day it's got to happen, right? All right, that's some thoughts and feelings off my chest. Let's get a couple of your comments and wrap up here on Locked On Canucks. Coach Rob Willie, okay, let's trust the coach on this one. He said, no, Vancouver got fleeced, basically gave him away. I think the truth lies somewhere between what Coach Rob Willie is saying and the people who are saying, like, oh, the Canucks did great. That's as good as they could have gotten. The Canucks got an okay return in this trade, but it's a loss. And again, we always judge trades at the moment. I always say this, right? It's part of the job. Being a podcaster, being part of being a sports fan, you judge trades in the moment, but you don't know. And the Canucks made some future bets in this one. But I see a team right now that's middle of the pack at best. You're praying Thatcher Demko gets healthy. You gave away your top goalie prospect. You don't have a great defense. You don't have a great coach in charge of the operation. And you have a middling or below average group up front. Like there's nothing that screams that this is going to turn around anytime soon. And again, it's not about turning around anytime soon. It's about selling hope, having a plan. And it still seems like the Canucks plan, like they know they need to get younger and retool and all this stuff. But right now, it looks like they're continuing to build a team that's destined for the mushy middle at best. And Canuck fans, I've said it 12 times on this show, Canuck fans deserve better. All right, let's get some positive comments here, all right? Feed me with the positivity, man. Tim O'Donnell saying in the comments, 3 guys under the age of 24 with NHL experience that have a chance to be really good. So you're saying there's a chance, man. And look, a 2026 first-round pick in a deep draft, that could be something to hang your hat on, right? Like this is we've heard for a long time this is supposed to be a good draft, and I know McKenna's falling down the rankings, but it does look like an above-average class here in 2026. So that is a good thing for Vancouver Canucks fans. I look at the Hall in general. Look, I haven't listened to the full presser. Again, I was on a merry-go-round. I was chasing my kids around Vancouver Christmas Market at Jack Pool Plaza. You know, showing my son the Olympic flame, you know, reminding him of better days. Days when I felt winning. Days when I got to celebrate a championship, gold. I'm surprised Patrick Oving didn't spin in the sense that, oh, we got 4 first-round picks. And, hey, let me know in the comments if he did say that. Because you got Ogren, who, I'm trying to remember, 17th or 22nd overall in that 2022 draft. Z Buim, 12th overall in 2024. Marco Rossi, 9th overall in 2020. In a sense, it is 4 first-round picks. But again, that's why my mentality in this trade was go get multiple first-round picks. Because just look at the 3 guys that the Wild drafted. All from, you know, late single digits to, you know, the 20s in the draft of the first round. You probably got a second-line center, a middle 6 winger, and potentially a number 1 defenseman. So one really home run pick. Rossi's a middle 6 center at number 9. You probably want better value in Ogren. Yeah, I guess that's about right. A middle 6 winger drafted late in the first round. That sounds just about right. But again, that's why I would have prioritized first-round picks. I'm not an NHL GM at the end of the day. I'm just a guy with a microphone. I'm just a guy in that room asking dudes questions. And for those who missed it, I guess I did ask the last question to Quinn Hughes. So like I said earlier on, the question that I did want to ask at the time, not thinking he was going to get traded the next day, was, do you have the desire to be a Vancouver Canuck? Was that a good question? Would he have given a good answer? I don't know. The question I did ask was, for those who missed it, you know, with all the noise that's gone on in the locker room, what can you do as a leader to quiet it down? And Kyle pointed out last night when we looked at that quote, it was a lot of me in there, right? He's like, I'm just trying to do the best I can to help this team. I mean, you see me play. I'm just trying to do what I can. A lot of me talk. And look, Quinn Hughes is not the primary culprit here. In fact, I think he's more of the victim of being stuck with this sad sack franchise. But you do want your leaders to have more of a we mentality. And hey, like, for all the heat Bo Horvat got, he talked with a lot of we and a lot of team when he spoke to the media. You know, trained by the Sedins, that was an important thing. And in hindsight now, looking at it, the Vancouver Canucks, what it meant to be a Vancouver Canuck, I think it kind of died when Bo Horvat got traded. And not to say Bo Horvat's a superstar, but that was a guy who was mentored by the Sedin twins. Guys who knew what it meant to be a Vancouver Canuck. Show up to work every day. Lead by example. Be the best. Be the most fit. Of the guys remaining on that team, I don't know if anyone exists like that. In fact, I'm pretty convinced that no one exists like that on this team. I know they're all uber competitors, and you got to be great to get to that level. But the meaning, the identity of what it means to be a Vancouver Canuck, no one knows what the hell it is anymore. I hope one day that changes, man. I really do. I really do. Let's wrap up with a couple more comments here. Locked On Canucks. Let's shout out Russ, man. More positivity. Russ last night said the Canucks are making the playoffs. Russ, let us know in the comments. The Canucks still making the playoffs after this? Go check out Nothing is Perfect on YouTube. Russ does a great job. He says, what if Demko stays healthy and we go on a run? Look, man, anything is possible, man. Anything is possible. Pigs could fly. You know, my schlong could double in size to 8 inches, man. Like, a lot of things could happen in life. But I think this Canucks team is destined for the bottom 10, and I hope it's the bottom 5, to be honest. And I don't really want that. Like, I like covering wins. I like talking to guys after wins. You know, talking to guys after losses isn't fun. But what's best for the franchise is that they lock in an elite player in this 2026 draft, and they do their homework on the scouting side and nail it with that other first-round pick they have. And hopefully collect some more picks along the way, right? Like, Quinn Hughes being traded is just the beginning. And I guess this is another thing I got right, too. And I didn't think I'd be right about this, but, you know, Kyle and I talked about it a couple weeks back. Shout out to the everydayers who tune in every day. We appreciate the hell out of you. We talked about who's going to be the first guy that got traded from the Vancouver Canucks. And I said Quinn Hughes. I was like, if they're really going to go in a different direction, I think it's going to start with the Quinn Hughes trade. A lot of people fired back at that. I even kind of second-guessed my own take, to be honest. I believe Kyle said it was key for sure, what a lot of the commenters said too. And here we go. Quinn Hughes traded from the Vancouver Canucks in one of the darkest days in franchise history. An unbelievable time. But let's shout out one more comment here. Let's go to D-Bombers. I haven't read this comment yet, but he says, "Yo, Trevor, not sure if you can answer this. You mentioned you wished you asked Quinn if he still had the desire to be a Canuck. In your industry, can asking pointed questions like that get you in trouble?" It's a great question. I think the short answer is not the short answer. The answer is, as long as you're being fair, you should be able to ask whatever the heck you want. As long as you're being fair and you're being factual. Like, there's other little rules, like when you're interviewing guys after game, you're usually supposed to keep it about the game. Now, with Quinn this week, he wasn't made available at practice, the day before that Sabres game. So some of the questions I was asked, like my one about him being able to quiet the noise, and the ones that Farhan asked about his thoughts on the noise as well, those were asked at the game because he wasn't made available. But in general, as long as you're being fair and honest and doing the way that's respectful, you should be able to ask whatever the heck you want. And I'm trying to toe that line as best I can. Again, I'm a rookie. In a sense, I mean, I've been writing about the Canucks for 12 years. I've been in that locker room part-time since 2021. And, man, I'll end it on this, man. I really thought that better days were ahead when I covered my first game. I've told the story before. Shout out to the everydayers who have heard this before, and apologies for telling it again. My first game in the booth was December 4th, 2021, Jim Benning's last game. The Canucks lose 4-1 to the Pittsburgh Penguins, get outshot like 40-12. I see the look on Travis Green's face, and I'm like, I think this guy's done. And sure enough, Travis Green Benning fired the next day. Jersey gets tossed on the ice that night, and I'm thinking, I brought the good vibes to Rogers Arena. Better days are finally ahead. We've got rid of Jim Benning. Here we go 4 years later. A jersey gets tossed on the ice, and Quinn Hughes has just been traded. One day, Canucks fans, things will be better. I'm not sure when, but I really hope you stay along for the journey with Kyle and I here on Locked On Canucks, because as pissed off as we are with this team, we love what we do here on Locked On Canucks. We love talking to the people, even in the dark times, even in one of the darkest days in franchise history like today. I guess the other competitors for darkest days are, the Game 7 losses, 94-2011, Messier and Keenan becoming Canucks. And this day, like these are probably in my mind, probably the 4 darkest days in Canucks history are those days right there. And I'm not 70 years old. I'm in my 30s. Okay. I haven't seen it all, but to me, those are the 4 candidates for the darkest days in Canucks history. And this one is right up there. Again, I'm Trevor Beggs. Appreciate tuning into Locked On Canucks. Quinn Hughes traded. It's a sad day. You can be excited about the return. I'm happy for you for it, but this is an absolute abomination and a failure of this franchise. We'll continue to try not failing you here on Locked On Canucks. If you like what you do, share the episode with a friend. Like and subscribe on YouTube. It helps us out a lot. On the podcast side, go follow us. Leave a 5-star review. Again, I'm Trevor Beggs, and we'll be back soon here on Locked On Canucks.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.